Hello, I'm Ethan Murrow. I am from the United States. I live and work in Boston and was born and raised in Vermont. And much of this work relates to ideas of agriculture, of the forest, nature, and the large open spaces we still have. I've been drawing since I can remember, but since I was a very tiny kid, I've been loving the freedom and possibility for exploration within drawing. The character or characters in these works really are me. They are self-portraits of a kind, in part because I am the cheapest actor and I use a lot of photographic imagery to help me in my work, but in part because I'm trying to talk about humans and their failures, their misadventures, all of the ways in which we try to succeed and yet continually come up against obstacles or make fools of ourselves. So I'm trying to find a way to both celebrate the adventurous spirit of humanity, the ways in which we innovate and explore, but also to criticize the fact that we keep intentionally involving ourselves in these problematic situations over and over again. So my process it's a multi-step process. It begins with wardrobe and props and building the scene that I want to involve these characters within. I would equate it most closely with filmmaking or theater and thinking about a stage or an environment that needs to be built. In this piece, for example, I made an actual head that is a cloud head out of cotton, and then I work with photographers to document different poses, just trying all kinds of things. So I have hundreds and hundreds of images. I then digitally collage them together, using that collage then to project onto the surface of the paper or the board. Then a very slow process of developing details and layers and trying to find the right sensibility for the drawing. And so that takes an immense amount of time and is also a great joy to build. I would say that much of this work began by thinking about early photography and film. I've always loved Charlie Chaplin, and someone like Chaplin did such a good job talking about the ways in which humans are prone to mistakes, yet also celebrating all of the joyous aspects of who we are. But there's also a bigger conversation about landscape painting, and particularly the ways in which landscape painting has informed so many of the ways in which we think about nature. And there's real power there in the history, and sometimes maybe too much power. Most of those landscape painters that we might think of as being iconic are white men. And so I'm a part of that history and problem, and trying to find my own way to talk about the inherent beauty of these paintings that I may be looking at from 100 or 200 years ago, but also that I need to be able to make fun of them and to think about the ways in which they perpetuate beauty in a way that is too simple and not actual fact. Because I don't think we actually find landscapes like this anymore. We certainly find beauty in landscape and we find magic within it, but it's occupied by the context of climate change and real people trying to make their lives and faltering and failing in these spaces. So I'm trying to use little aspects of fakery and fiction to encounter some of that. And then last but not least, there's a lot of performance in this work. I've been heavily influenced by artists like Hippolyte Rist, Cindy Sherman, so someone like Shazia Sikander, who explores Persian miniatures and has a feminist lens of looking at those. I guess another one to mention would be William Kentridge, who critique of himself as a white man in South Africa growing up during apartheid was very, very influential to me as an opening where I understood that you could involve yourself in the work, you could involve yourself with humor and absurdity, but also with something deeply serious. And so I have a lot of admiration for what he has done over the course of his career. I switched to color recently, but I was trained as a landscape painter doing plein air painting, And so for years, through many, many versions of black and white drawing, I've been thinking, should I return to color? So 2 years ago, right before COVID, I was able to do 3 massive 3-story wall drawings in Seattle for Expedia. So we made the wall drawing with 13 assistants, big colorful pieces. Then we had COVID, and I wanted to do more work that had joy in it and more work that had not that it would be silly, but that there would be something lighthearted as well as something serious, something playful. And I found that the color allowed me to capture that in some ways that sometimes the black and white can't. Sometimes the black and white is more serious or nostalgic or romantic, which I love, and the color allows me to explore this other emotional side of my work. So that's been a wonderful change. Plants and flowers feature broadly in all of this work, and that comes out of the pandemic that we all have been living through and are living through. And for me, during COVID, things like my houseplants, flowers, a flowering tree in the spring, especially in the earlier part of COVID, were deeply important to me. But they're meant to be a way to talk about something optimistic too, that when you see a flower, I think not everyone, but most people have a little spark inside them, and I think that's a beautiful thing, and it's so simple, but I think we need those simple joys right now. I love this question, where do the characters go when they leave the painting, because it really gets at the heart of the way in which I think about composition and the image making process. So I think of these pieces as being part of a kind of theater, and that sense of anticipation and that sense of something that may occur or could occur is part of what I'm trying to channel here. I want these to be narrative openings and for the viewer to help complete them. So they're meant to be totally ridiculous, that there is no understanding of what the conclusion is, and I know that can be frustrating sometimes for viewers who want answers. I don't want to give answers. I want to give little temptations and presents and questions, and I want to encourage people to finish the sentence. So I don't know where this ridiculous figure is going, maybe to market, maybe escaping from someone who's chasing him, but he is completely committed to his task. And I see them as that as a kind of a beautiful thing, this effort and work, but also that simultaneously he may not see what is happening around him. He may not hear the context or notice the history or even notice the crack in the ice in front of him. And so maybe right after he goes through the page, it's a huge crash. I don't know, but I like that sense of anticipation, and that's part of what I'm trying to talk about here.